A look at what gaming can teach us and its place in education. Next on Carpe Diem.
Ripped and good looking and 6'8" and playing the NBA. Not to stereotype, but that's not most of the video gamers I know. Is this count as a sport?
The virtual friends, they think that those are their real friends.
I had zero knowledge of the fact that this exists.
You didn't know there were cyber athletes?
My hand to God, I didn't know there were but my issue is it's still not a sport.
Well,
it's
again,
a game. You follow me what I'm saying here, Bernie?
I do. Do you have any statistics on how many of those people also go to Star Trek conventions?
The glorification of violence in our society. This includes the gruesome and grisly video game.
I were a betting man, I'd say that he probably logs 6 to 8 hours a day playing one of those, Fortnite or one of those video games where you're doing nothing but dehumanizing people by blowing their heads off, one after another after another.
Video gaming has a bad reputation in the media, and many fear that this highly engaging activity promotes violence and laziness. While gaming can be blamed for teaching some bad behaviors, there are positive things one can learn from playing video games.
There are more than 2.5 billion gamers around the world, and in 2019, gamers will spend around $152.1 billion on games. These numbers grow yearly and show us how much gaming has grown to become a large part of modern life. Today's gamers can immerse themselves into virtual realities, raising the concern of many, including parents and teachers, who worry about their children and students spending more time engaged in games rather than engaging in the world around them.
So it's become this stigma of, living in somebody's basement and not going out in the sun and just because you're antisocial.
Gaming is something that actually transcends borders.
The picture of the kid in the basement alone playing video games, not talking to anybody, that's, for me, I think it's kind of outdated or a misconception.
There's no doubt, video gaming has a bad rep, but is this highly engaging activity something we should be concerned about, or an activity worth embracing?
And then there's fighting games like Street Fighter where you can see every morsel of blood. And I'm just wow, that's gruesome. That's what it's supposed to be. Good job, because that would be weird if it was just 1 pixel.
If it wasn't gaming, then it would be the movies are violent. If it wasn't movies are violent, then it would be TV shows are violent. If it's not TV shows, then the books are violent.
Years ago, they would blame rap music for violence. They would blame a lot of things for violence, and yet there's still violence. There was violence before those things were there. There's gonna be violence after those things are gone. So all of a sudden, we're just gonna decide, okay, now we're gonna blame the video games.
So at least in my classroom, for what I see, it's incredibly social. It's incredibly supportive. They want to help each other. They want to, figure out, tips and ways to play the games.
Knowing the impact gaming can make in a person's life, is there a place for video games in classrooms? To get a better understanding of how gaming can help in learning, let's take a look at the skills and subjects gaming has been able to help teach. Because games offer immersive role-playing and strong storylines, its dynamics have gained the attention of researchers and doctors for treatments and therapeutics. A study published in The American Psychologist found computer games could provide an effective and cheap way, alongside other treatment, to alleviate mental health problems. While the relationship between health and gaming is in development, the research found that games not containing immersive role-playing and socially complex storylines could also help play a part in alleviating mental health conditions. A game as simple and easy to access, such as Angry Birds, was found to improve players' moods, ward off anxiety, and promote relaxation. There is also growing interest in using video games as a tool for learning. Introducing Minecraft Education Edition. Minecraft is a first-person game with a focus on exploration, mining, and crafting. Originally released for PC and called Cave Game in 2009, it was aimed for those interested in code and designing gaming worlds. On November 1st, 2016, Minecraft released an education edition of its game, designed for easy use in a classroom setting. Minecraft's open pixel world allows one to build and create, which can be useful in classroom activities that call for being creative, problem solving, and collaborating. The game encourages teachers to use this edition to create opportunities for students to work on objectives in different subjects, including mathematics and visual arts. There are also resource packs and free lesson plans on the website to help teachers develop classroom activities. Minecraft is one of the first highly successful entertainment games to have tapped into its potential for educational use and focus on using its successful aspects to assist teachers in their lessons and help students. When it comes to designing an educational game developer Rob Howland shared his thought process behind creating Influent, a game made to help people in learning languages.
I got into developing Influent because I ended up moving to Japan and I was learning Japanese, and I found it very useful to use flashcards to learn the kanji. There's a lot of vocabulary in Japanese that you need to learn, and I was associating it with the images for the kanji with like homemade flashcards that I'd made hundreds and hundreds of. And at one point I took all the nouns, the noun deck, and started placing them on the objects in my apartment and like taping them to the refrigerator and the microwave and, you know, the wall and the picture frames and like all this stuff that just I could look at the kanji and see it on the object, and it was very effective. And then I kind of had that epiphany with the flashcards on the objects, and it kind of just grew from there. And I was like, this is a really good concept for a game. We could very easily attach words to physical objects and learn in the same way that I'm learning in my apartment, but have, you know, audio pronunciations and a checklist of all the words and a positive feedback system with like progression that, you know, encourages the learning, facilitates the learning, makes you want to keep playing.
Influent has been out for around 5 years and features 18 languages so far. While Rob Howland continues to expand this passion project, he hopes to see a rise in successful educational games and more attention and funding towards developing them.
Like, where are the educational games? The good ones, the ones that people want to play, that are at that level of, you know, it's what gamers expect of Minecraft. It's kind of funny, like I named it Influent because I wanted it to like influence the, I guess, the world in a way, to see that there's a way to take games and use them for like educational purposes. But I also named it obviously because of fluency and that sort of thing. But I really wanted it to like influence like the next generation of educational games. And I haven't seen really anything yet. It's been out for like 5 years, but I hope AAA developers will recognize the hole in the market that exists and start doing something, having a game keep your attention the way that I've seen games keep not just my attention, but like kids' attention specifically. You know, I think that there's a really amazing opportunity for learning to take place in a game environment. You know, if there was a lot of attention and a lot of funding in this direction, I think we'd start to see like super kids coming out of school, like just absolutely like the smartest people on the planet, because they've learned so much through game-based or game-facilitated learning.
To better understand the role games can play in a classroom setting, Toronto school teacher Mike Farley shares the chance he took in introducing video games to his students and how it has transformed the way they learn geography.
I was teaching a world issues course, a grade 12 world issues course, and the school board that I was working in at the time, they got a board license for a game called Pax Warrior, which was exploring the 1994 Rwandan genocide. And I didn't really know anything about using games with students at that point. but I decided to give it a try because I was interested in trying new things. And the impact that that game had on the students, to me, was completely eye-opening. And I've never really looked back since then. I've probably used about 40 games subsequently since over the last 15 years. The games I'm using are looking at kind of real-world issues, political, environmental, economic, and they're massively complex issues, and it's very easy to kind of engage in black and white thinking about these things without being able to see the nuance and the subtlety and all of the forces at play. So I think games, good games, they really have the power to show students the complexity of these situations and let them try out and play around with different possible solutions to that. So for example, with my grade 7s right now, they're just starting to play this game called Stop Disasters, which I mentioned before, which is looking at tsunami preparation. How do towns prepare for tsunamis? The game itself is fantastic, but in the end, they actually have to compare the 2011 Japanese tsunami to the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami and look at how those two different areas were prepared. So they play the game, but they know there's a larger goal at the end of it. They know that there's this bigger question that they're trying to answer. So if the game was kind of the end goal in itself, I think there are some problems with that because they want to just keep playing and playing. But they know, okay, I need to play this game a certain amount of time in order to understand what I need to understand in order to answer this bigger question and write my analysis of it after. To somebody from the outside, they might think of my classroom would look like they would walk in and there'd be 25 students sitting at desk quietly, absorbed with their video game, not talking. And to be honest, it's actually the opposite. When you walk into my classroom and students are playing games, it's very vibrant. It's somewhat chaotic in a good way. There's students kind of yelling across the room, giving advice, asking questions, people walking around, looking at what other people are doing. Sometimes I have the students play in pairs, so they're actually having to make decisions together. They tend to talk about the games outside after class, either in person or through, online chats, etc. So that's probably a misconception I would have had before I started all this.
Seeing a rise in engagement in his classroom, he founded an online resource named ChangeGamer for teachers looking to do the same.
I saw that the games had a power to touch students who normally weren't that engaged in the classroom. It affected everybody, but especially I was noticing with students who were somewhat disaffected or somewhat disengaged. And the main reason I started ChangeGamer was because I would talk to a lot of people about using games in the classroom in the years, after I started using them. But the main question or the main challenge that people face was how do I use games in the classroom? I don't know where to start. I know that there's these great games available, but there's no scaffolding, there's no curriculum that I can use, and I don't know where to begin. So that's when I started posting some of my stuff online in a much more informal way, trying to share with people how they could start. And then we formalized it probably about 7 or 8 years ago. We actually kind of formalized as an organization, and then other people started getting on board and providing their own curriculum, and that's when things really grew from there.
Mike Farley's online resource, changegamer.ca, features games that have been proven to be successful among educators, making it easier for teachers and students to reach the right games. Helping us better understand video games' effect on us, PhD candidate and researcher for Babelier Labs, Augustine Josel, looks into what aspects of our cognition video games change.
We should always remember that science only finds what it looks for. So we studied the effects on visual attention. Visual attention, we didn't see any negative effects, was positive effects. The lab studied the effect, for instance, of action video gaming, so just playing the game. It was only people who play versus people who don't play. And the effect of emotion recognition, for instance, and they didn't find any difference. On some tasks of working memory, you do find an effect, a positive effect of action gaming. On some other tasks that are more verbal tasks, you don't. But we never saw a negative effect of playing. I am not in this research to prove that video games are good. I'm doing this to just study the effects, whether good or bad. Honestly, finding bad effects would have been even better and easier, because at least you could say, oh yeah, the new generation is just has no attention span just because of that. But that's not the case. Let's say that you have some studies where the participants just did not engage with the game just because they did not like the game. So it's not true that all games are engaging for everyone. Some games may be engaging for some people, and some may not be engaging for those, and for a lot of reasons. The reasons can be the theme is not attractive, the reasons may be the mechanics that you don't like. It can also be that actually the game, you like the game, but the difficulty was tailored for your, not for your age population.
Considering the many factors that contribute to how people engage with games, finding the balance between educational and entertaining is a challenge for those searching for a successful educational game or trying to create one.
My name is Andrew Cross, and I'm an independent inventor. Recently, I developed an awesome handheld language learning device known as the Sanji Genji 10. I brought my prototype to a major technology corporation, and things were really taking off. That is, until somebody stole it! But that's okay, because I'm here to prove the Sanji Genji 10 is my invention, and I need your help.
I was hiring an entire team to expand upon it and make it like the coolest thing, open world, like learning tool there ever was. But yeah, there's really no funding for it.
I think more than the video game, the problem lies in the implementation, and we still don't know how to implement the video games best so that the students actually remember what we want them to remember in the best way. They need to be really well thought out, otherwise it's not gonna matter.
It's just, for me, if it's done well, it's a very, very rich way of learning. It can be a very, very rich way of learning. I think the most rich learning that I've experienced, all the different tools that I use, a good game, if it's scaffolded properly with good curriculum, I'm not sure in my own experience if I've had a more powerful teaching tool than that.
Researchers from all over the world have helped us better understand the way gaming can help one in learning and developing skills. Looking closer to home, we spoke with MSU School of Communication and Media adjunct, Professor Stacy Gitlin, who covered Fortnite's World Championship this past summer. Let's take a look at what Professor Gitlin had to share about her experience working with the community of professional gamers, along with her thoughts on game usage in the classroom.
Fortnite, owned by Epic Games, they had a World Cup championship this past summer at Arthur Ashe Stadium over in Queens. They had over 40 million people try to qualify for this finals tournament. The top 100 from all across the world qualified, and they came to New York City to compete. I'm a professor here at Montclair State University, and I started working for a company called Victory Pictures, who is a post-production house up in Connecticut. So we were hired to do profile pieces on all the people who qualified. They're 14, 15, 16 years old, and they don't even go by their own names. They go by online handles. So no one knew who they were. So our job was to tell the story of who these people were. The young man who won the championship, Kyle Giersdorf, his name is Buga. That's his online name. He won $3 million. He's 16 years old. He won $3 million playing Fortnite, a video game that he learned to play a year ago. And that's his profession. He's a professional gamer. People think that these gamers are antisocial, right? They're behind the camera. They're not out on a team interacting with people face to face all the time. These kids wear headsets and talk to each other. They're actually broadening their borders, because they're not limited to their town rec basketball team. They're talking to people in Europe and Asia. In television production, when I'm out in the field or when I'm working a live game or I'm in a truck, I have to be addressing a lot of things at a time and figure out what is the priority order and things I need to do here. And I think gaming really did that for me. I can tell you these gamers that are pro gamers practice 8 hours a day. They practice as much as any other sport. It's a skill set like anything else. And I wish, hope, and I implore people to just look at something a little deeper before you make automatic judgments about everything. And if you monitor your child while they're playing whatever game they're playing, there's no reason why it can't be a positive aspect on their lives, like anything else. So when it comes to bringing in video games and consoles into a classroom, I don't mind it with a purpose. There has to be a reason for it. And that's really where I think it can be both a distraction and a help at the same time. I think students, kids, whatever level you're at, you learn better in an engaged setting. I try not to just speak at my students. I don't want to just lecture to them a bunch of words that they have to write down. I want to engage with them, and the easiest way to engage a lot of times is gamification, is making some sort of fun activity out of it. If it's in a classroom and it happens to be a real game that serves your purpose, outstanding. And we have to make these kids be engaged with the learning experience. And if games are going to do that, then more power to every single teacher that brings a gaming console into a school.
Professor Gitlin helps us recognize some of the ways video games can help in a learning environment. And while there are games out there that are designed for the purpose of teaching skills and subjects, can we learn something from games that are not designed for learning? We visited Montclair State University's gaming club to find out what members have been able to learn on their own from playing video games.
I think there's a common misconception among people that gaming has to be like a secluded activity, that it needs to be like one person like in their basement or, you know, just hanging out alone playing video games for hours on end. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think a lot of video games nowadays are like team games or games where you kind of need other people to participate. So it really helps people branch out and kind of gain communication skills that they can actually use in like the real world in terms of like getting a job, internships, even just working with other classmates they have in college.
I'd see on TV like, oh, video games are for nerds. I'm gonna push you into a locker. But then like I made a lot of my friends because like we'd play a lot of video games like Pokemon and whatnot. You know, it's more friendly than people give it credit for. Of course, there is still some backlash in certain video game areas, but it just makes me proud that I don't have to like hide a part of my interests and things that make me me with other people who share those interests too.
It helped me stay away from bad crowds. It helped me gain some of the close friends I have now. It kept me away from drugs, alcohol, because I always had my community with me.
I definitely have learned a wide variety of things, most importantly, social skills from video games, especially with more multiplayer focused games. It helps you do that in a place where you have shared interests, so you immediately have something to talk about and something to converse about, where in real life that can be difficult sometimes. If you can find the right community, it's definitely very helpful in developing those kinds of social skills, if you can remember that the person on the other side of the screen is a human.
Everything this club has given me, between friends, experiences, games, and also just the productivity of running and managing an e-board for 3 years, I love giving that back to people in the form of like a community that I can share with them. Coming in as a scared freshman, you know, there's not a lot you can do on campus. You don't really know anyone. For the most part, as a commuter, you come to classes, you go home, and that's it. This club brought me to campus more.
My transition to college was a little rocky at the start, no pun intended, but it was made easier, much easier, by being part of the Gamers Club. And even going to tournaments, like everyone's like, oh, who do you play? You know, what's your play style? Are you from around here? You know, there's a friendly setup. It says Friendly's, like the restaurant on it. I think that's kind of cute. And it's just really nice to have that kind of bond with people that, you know, you don't even really know.
Gaming helped me sort of realize my own life expectancy. And I feel like with the concept of gaming, I feel like it can help kids and even adults grasp some of the harder concepts of life.
Certain games discuss about certain topics that are more mature and not just in like, you know, violence or sexual themes, but maybe more deep thinking, theorizing certain ideas.
Gaming has absolutely influenced me to pick my major. I wouldn't be able to write these essays. I wouldn't be able to read these books, to like explore the lore and stuff like that of these incredibly challenging books that I've been reading, if not for games influencing me to be like, wow, this was a great story that I played. Where are other places where I can get these stories?
For example, Call of Duty Black Ops, although it's a fictional game depicting, you know, violence and whatnot, it actually delves into militant history of the black operations in the 60s, the Cold War. It's all fictional, but it gives me interest. It actually intrigued me in militant history and, you know, history in general. It's just very interesting to see like a fictional take on real life scenarios and events.
Learning and developing like how you inhale information. I guess that's a weird way to phrase it, but I'm gonna say it's just like inhaling information, like Kirby, video games, is like, you know, it depends on person to person. Some people are visual, some people need to interact, some people need to take notes.
I definitely think there is a place for video games in classrooms. Like with every other teaching tool, it should be used as a tool and not just as the thing the class does, of course.
You dissect the book and like do analysis, you look at the story, the characters, the themes, etc. And I think you could do the same thing with games because, you know, they can both be a form of art, and with video games, there's a more engaging factor that may definitely be more beneficial for today's students.
When you have like story games, like visual novels that are based upon having lots and lots of text, there are lessons to be learned there.
Kids like doing things that are fun, and games are fun, and learn better when they're having fun.
And it could definitely help people kind of take interest in other things.
We've seen today that video games can teach a wide range of things, and not only while being used in an educational setting. Gamers have been able to develop skills and learn valuable life lessons from their experiences playing games. So, next time a child or student takes interest in video games, let's remember the positive role it can play in their lives.